Welcome, welcome. This is Marnie Swedberg. I'm excited to have you here with us today for a program called Hidden Pathways to Creative Marketing with our guest, Linda Todd. Today, we're going to be talking about the most important strategy for marketing, how to think beyond your main goal, where to start, what to join ASAP, how to stay excited, how to define seeming failure, what to keep doing, and what to avoid. Our guest today was saved from almost certain death while working in the Gaza Strip. She shares riveting messages of faith, hope, and miracles. Linda is an award-winning speaker, author, truth-seeking adventurer, and daydreamer. She's one of our speakers at womenspeakers.com, and you can also reach out to her at her own website, thesecretlifeofwonderwoman.com. I'm so excited right now to welcome you, Linda, to the platform. I'm excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Marnie. I'm excited to be here. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Well, we got started on this topic because you were telling me about some of the creative ways God has been using you as a speaker in the past little while here. And of course, all of us as speakers have gone through COVID now. And the speaking engagements are definitely coming back, but they are not full. They're not back anywhere at the level that they were before COVID. So we're still watching for God. Where do you want me to share these messages you've put in my heart? And I'm so excited that you're here to share with us some of the things that God has been using you to do, teaching you in this last little while. So maybe I want to start with your most important strategy, because I feel like that's always the best place to start.
Yes. For me, the most important strategy is to realize that there is no one right strategy. So many times we get hung up if something goes wrong, now what?
Yeah.
And I actually talk about this. I call it anything but plan A, because plan A is always the first choice and it's rarely the one that we go with. And so for me, that has been a key strategy, is don't get hung up on that. Go with the next choice. Keep your mind open, keep your heart ready for what actually comes along.
It's interesting.
Because what we think the plan is, God so often has different ideas, and his ideas are better, and we can get so hung up and focused on doing things the right way because I planned this, that we miss the big blessing that he's just waiting to toss on us. So that's my big strategy. There is no strategy except to keep going and to keep open and to keep praying. God's hearing us. He has the best plan ever, and we can miss out on it.
Yeah, I love that God has, people say there is no plan B with God. And so, what I like to say is, I like to say that God is above time and outside of time and space. He already knows what is going to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen. So, for us to say there's only one plan and there's no other options is not reasonable. There's many options when we're going forward. There's many options. And I love the flexibility that you're bringing here to this strategic part of things where, and Elizabeth Elliot, I love this definition. She defined humility as flexibility. And I believe that when we say, it has to be this way or it just can't be, it's not true. God can work through the most craziest things.
Exactly. And for me, that exhibits a lack of faith. If I think that my idea is the only one going, really? One of my favorite quotes on the subject is, if plan A doesn't work, there's 25 other letters.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. And even in scripture, sometimes, like I think in the first part of, I think it's First Corinthians, Paul and his associates were taken over to this place. They had a big open door of opportunity. The Holy Spirit led them there. And then it said the Spirit drew them away from there to another place. And they were confused by that. Like, why? We have an open door here. This is working great. But the Spirit moved them. I think the flexibility part is really, really big. And that kind of flows into your next thought, was how to think beyond the main goal.
Absolutely. The goal in our world, the goal is to have speaking engagements. But what if that goal isn't sitting in front of you right now? Do you sit on your hands and go, well, I'll just wait till God sends me a speaking engagement? God says, I sent you to speak. You can still do that, right? And
I love that.
for example, at the church that I have attended, they had Friday night services for people who have been through rehab and lifestyles like that. They wanted speakers. That's maybe not where I feel that God had been calling me, and yet he opened a door. Do I say, well, that's not a women's group? I don't think that's where God wants me, or God's going, go speak there. And so I did. And then in this last season, where we're still sort of just making our way out of COVID, it was Toastmasters. I'm a member of Toastmasters. I'll talk more about that later too. It was Toastmasters contest season. Now, if I was a contestant, I would speak until I lost. That's okay, but that's not as much fun as just speaking with no worry about being judged. And so I volunteered my services as what we call a test speaker, which means you speak for people who are being judged on how they evaluate a speaker. So I got two things out of this. I got all kinds of speaking opportunities to share what God has done in saving my life and giving me this abundant joy. I got to share that with audiences that I would have never planted my body in front of at this time. And I got all these great evaluations on what
right.
even better. What an opportunity. That's not something that, oh, well, that's not really an opportunity. That's a great opportunity.
Right. Yeah, I think I always say when the goal becomes God, that's when we know we're in trouble. God's supposed to be God, right? Okay. So I go like this. Okay, here's what happens is God gives us a goal and he says, this is what I want you to go after. And we're like, yeah, okay, I'm going. And then all of a sudden the goal becomes so big that I no longer see anything except the goal. And God says he wants us to bring that back into the right size so that we can see everything around it. I mean, it's like you would have completely missed all of those opportunities if you would have just been saying only this way, plan A, the highway, or no way. I mean, it's just so beautiful to let God orchestrate and let him direct our paths, even if it's outside. And I just finished a training program on parameters, and I love parameters in that it gives us, like you say, normally I speak to women's groups. Okay, but then a tsunami comes, and now all of a sudden you change what you normally do, right? you get through it. You get through that season, and God moves us around. So I feel like it's so important for us to be flexible. When you are talking to speakers, and even when you're thinking about yourself and your own marketing, where is the place to start?
Start with what you have. Start with the women
you have in your hand.
already know. Start with everything in life. Everything is about relationships. And God uses relationships. He brings people in our lives. Mm-hmm. He takes people out of our lives. And I always like to start there, because if you don't build bonds of friendship, relationship, integrity with people around you, as soon as you get on a larger stage, there's going to be somebody going, oh yeah, I know her. I wouldn't go listen to her. Then what? Right? And so get involved in your local church. If you don't have a local church, start there. Yeah. Because that opens, God uses the church. He gave us each other. And we really not cynically tap into that, but genuinely tap into that. Build those bonds. Become friends with your pastor. And go to events. One of the things that I did, I've given seminars at Missions Fest. And the first one I did, I was watching, I love Missions Fest. And I noticed that the theme that year was about, Christians under persecution. And I had recently come back from Gaza. So I emailed my pastor friend, who was the pastor in Gaza, Dr. Hannah Massad, and I said, hey, Missions Fest is coming. Do you want me to do a presentation for you? He's like, wait, I don't know. I didn't even think about it. Oh, let me have a check. So I initiated that. I facilitated that. And with his backup, I got the approval for that. But that would have never happened had I not built that relationship with him through the church in Gaza. It's all about those relationships.
It's the biblical principle of Moses and God saying to him, what's that you have in your hand?
Yes.
You know, he had a rod. Woohoo, a rod. Who could care less? But that's exactly what God used to turn it into a snake, to part the Red Sea. It was just a stupid rod. And so I feel like we minimize that so much. And I love that that's where you say to start. Start at home. Start with what you have. Start from there. Then you have what to join ASAP.
Well, I am a big fan and a big promoter of Toastmasters because Toastmasters, it puts you in front of people that you may not normally be in front of, and you don't know who's going to be in that audience. It gives you a chance to work on your speaking skills, because everything we do in life, this is what I always say, until I'm getting paid $1 million to be here, I guess the more I can learn. So far, there's still a lot I can learn. And when you look in the Bible, Noah, it took forever to build the ark. Even Jesus, he didn't just pop onto the planet ready to go. He had a period of life and of training. Everything comes that way. So we need to just be patient, join those organizations like Toastmasters, like your local church, to grow in your gifts. Gifts, yes, gifts are gifts, but there's still growth that's needed. And when I came back from Gaza, after I was sick there, I had lost the ability to speak, both physically and mentally. And I used Toastmasters to learn how to speak. And because people knew me, the feedback I got, oh, Linda, last time I heard you, you were a little bit rough to hear, but this time, and that's encouragement. We need encouragement.
Right.
And that's the side of joining an organization like that, is it really encourages our growth. And we need that.
Yeah, love that. I'd encourage you also to join womenspeakers.com. We would love to have you there if you're a speaker. And of course, Linda's one of our speakers there too. So join organizations that make sense for you as you're moving forward. And I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier too is to look locally, and where are some local organizations that you can get involved in, or even are there women's conferences happening locally? Are there women's expo days like that happening if you're a speaker to women, I'm assuming right now, but that you can go to attend, ask if you can help. I mean, one of our speakers at womenspeakers.com, she shows up in a lot of conferences because she just goes to help, and she meets them. Pretty soon she's on the docket. She's on the speaking list. So it's just a really great strategy to just get involved and show your willingness to invest and to be part of something, not just always to be on the stage.
That's right. Exactly. It's that servant heart.
Yeah.
You know, we need to, when God gives us gifts, he doesn't give them to us for our glory. He gives them to us for his glory.
Right.
And so we need to have that in mind and use our gift to serve.
For
and
sure.
That's where the blessing is.
Yeah. So how do you stay excited?
How do I stay excited? Well, I do reading about the brain. And this is important. There's so much about the brain that we are not necessarily familiar with, not really cognizant of. But when I got sick in Gaza and I came out with a brain injury, I was really motivated to learn about my brain. And I learned something fantastic, that gratitude, the attitude of being grateful, actually changes our brains and makes us more receptive to gratitude. It works both ways. And when we are more grateful, we are in a more positive mindset. And when we are in a more positive mindset and more receptive to God's blessings, that makes everything something to be excited about. A term that I love is the term tiny wins. Don't wait for big stuff. Celebrate. I got out of bed this morning and I didn't hurt. Woohoo! Right? Because that sets us up for a more productive day.
Mhm,
And when we
mhm.
celebrate the tiny wins, we always have something to be excited about. If
Yeah,
we're waiting for the big stuff, we're waiting for that big contract to come
yeah,
along, that might come along few and far between for a while. And if that's the only thing that we get excited about, it won't take long before
mhm.
looking forward to anything. And then how are we going to light somebody else up if we're not lit up?
Mm.
And it's easy, it's not fake because some, oh yeah, that's fake happiness. No, because when we realize every day what God's blessings actually look like and what He's got, He is able to do immeasurably more
Yeah.
than we could ask or even imagine.
Mhm.
That last part of that phrase is what gets me. Even imagine.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
hospital, completely incapacitated. I could have never imagined this, but
Yeah.
look what God gave me.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't need to know why. I know that He is able to do immeasurably more.
Yeah.
That makes me excited.
Yeah, it's again a biblical principle here is rejoice in the Lord always, and in
Yeah,
all things give thanks. I mean, it's like before brain cognitive studies and
yeah.
all these imaging that they can do right now. God knew, God told us, if
He made
you
our
will just right, obviously, it's just proving what God's been teaching in the scripture all along is that if you will remain in an attitude of gratitude, if you will remain in praise and thanksgiving, if you will always be looking for that instead of always look, I always say we're really quick to mention to God what He isn't doing. Like you haven't done that yet, or you aren't doing this, or where are you here? But
Yep.
where we're supposed to be focusing on what He has done, the goodness that He has provided, the air I can breathe today that's not toxic, the freedom that I experience, even if it's limited, whatever it is, we can find things to be thankful for. And as we do, it releases endorphins, and God knew that. And now science is proving it that that it works, but it's totally not fake at all. It's a biblical
No,
principle.
no. And another verse that goes right into that that I learned from firsthand is where Philippians 4:17, the
Mhm.
peace that passes all understanding.
Yeah.
When we have that kind of peace, where's room for anxiety?
Mhm. Right.
It's not. And the
They
way
don't
I interpret
cohabitate.
that verse is not the peace that passes understanding. What does that mean? I look at it as saying having peace when peace doesn't make sense.
Yep. That's what I
When I
think
was
too.
laying in that hospital bed and I realized after trying to figure out what was going on that nothing at all worked, I
Mm.
couldn't move anything. I had no voice. It was fascinating to me because the next thought that came to mind was, but God's got me. So I don't know what's going on here, but I don't have to worry about it. I'm okay.
Huh.
And I, what? But that's peace, having peace when peace doesn't make sense. That's the peace that God gives us. No room for anxiety there. Just, okay, God, I'm here.
Mhm.
Do
Mhm.
what you will, because clearly I'm
Mhm.
not going to do it. But when we have that level of peace, we don't have anxiety. When we don't have anxiety,
Yeah.
we stay hopeful and positive and forward looking.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with your story, I want the 2-minute version, not very much background. Just how did you end up in the hospital in Gaza Strip?
Oh, okay. Starting right there, I got sick. I thought I had the flu because that's normal. Within a couple of days, I was super, super sick. I didn't know what it was still. By the end of the week, I was coming in and out of consciousness, ended up in the hospital, coma. Turned out I had encephalitis and sepsis. They were both trying to
Wow.
kill me. I was in a coma for about a month, woke up in a hospital in Israel because I'd been transported out of the
Oh
Gaza
my
Strip.
goodness.
Loads of details there. But anyway, that's how I ended up sick. Nobody knows how I got sick. I have my ideas about that, which another
Yeah.
time. But that's, and then I came back to Canada in a wheelchair with no expectation of recovery.
Wow. Question, were you alone at that time, or did you have companions with you?
I had friends with me,
Yeah.
yep, but
Mhm.
my family wasn't there.
Mm, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, and I think that one, we were just talking about being excited. Um, and it's one thing to be excited when God is doing the clearly obvious miracles in front of us. And it's like, oh my goodness, we're just blown away. But it's a whole other thing to stay faithful, to stay enthusiastic, to stay grateful when you're in a hospital bed, when you don't understand what's happening, when you're facing what seems to be failure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And exactly. That is where failure, when we learn to see wins and losses in terms of God is on the throne,
Mhm.
it's a game changer.
I love that.
When I was in the hospital, the doctor
Mhm.
came to me and he said, "We have to draw blood from your femoral artery. We can't get blood anywhere else, but it's going to hurt so bad. I just want you to know." And he went to get the blood draw kit. And talk about seeming failure. I'm laying there thinking, if that's all he's got left, I'm not going to make it. This is over. But then I thought, you know what? I don't know if it is or it isn't, but God knows.
Yeah.
And so whatever happens next, it's okay
Yeah.
because he's got me. And God was so kind. I fell into the coma before the doctor came back with that needle to stick in
What?
me.
You never even had to feel that.
Right. So when we can just give what looks like human failure
Oh.
and say, okay, God, I don't understand, but you know what? I don't have to.
Mm.
All I know is that you are on the throne. And he is. He stays on the throne no matter what happens down here.
I'm so adopting that phrase that define success or failure is God still on the throne. That's just yeah, because
It's
for years I've defined failure as feedback. It's just like a dashboard on a car saying ding ding ding, it's time to go get gas or it's time to change your oil or something.
yeah,
It's just to alert you to something, to pray about, to make a change about, to watch for, whatever. It's failure is not permanent. It is, I mean, until the last breath. And if you haven't chosen Christ by your last breath, I'm afraid failure is permanent. And at that moment, despite the fact that God's on the throne, you won't be with him for eternity because that's what you chose during your life. But until that last breath, actually failure is just feedback. And I love that. Is Christ still on the throne? Well, then we're all right.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he opens doors. And sometimes his
Yeah.
answer is just chill. It's okay.
Right.
And when we can do all of that with the peace that passes understanding, minus the anxiety, and just knowing he's on the throne, there's no cause for alarm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the human side of us still goes, wait, but you should be upset about this.
I always say that I would be more faithful if it didn't feel so irresponsible. Because you feel like I should be really upset about this. Or somebody else says to you, I've had people say to me, I don't think you understand the gravity of this situation. And I'm like, oh, I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want you to tell us the story about not having a ticket. And, kind of the short version of that one, too. You were in a situation where you needed an airline ticket and you didn't have one. And tell us what
Correct.
God did there.
Okay, I was coming from Gaza into Egypt because I had to fly out of Cairo to come home again. There are no airports in Gaza. And the day that I had intended to leave, I got to the border. They held me up for ages, the Egyptians did. And then they sent me back. They wouldn't allow me to cross the border. So my flight, I missed my flight. It had to leave without me. So I got on the phone, changed my flight plan, but I couldn't get another ticket. So all I did was take a pen and scratch out the old times and write in the new times. And that was the extent of my ticket. So I tried the border again, and they took my passport and they were gone for a long time. And I was getting nervous. And they said, when we come back, we want to see your ticket. I don't have a ticket. all I had was this mess. So I remembered Brother Andrew. I love Brother Andrew. I remembered the prayer that he would always pray when he needed guards to not see what he was up to. He would say, Lord, I know you've made blind eyes see. Please make seeing eyes blind. And I thought, if Brother Andrew can pray it, I can pray it. So I prayed that. I said, okay, God, I know you've done this before. I need you to make that official not see that I have a mess in my hand. I don't have a ticket. And the Egyptian guard came back and he said, okay, let me see your ticket. And I showed him this messy piece of paper and he took one glance at it. Okay. And that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And I love that because I know that was God, because the Egyptian officials don't mess around.
Right. Right. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know Brother Andrew, he's God's smuggler, and he would be smuggling Bibles into China, and he could not, if they saw him, he would be imprisoned, and that would be the end of his freedom for life. But he would just pray, God, make seeing eyes blind. And it's so amazing when we have the courage to do that, when God gives us the faith to do the next thing that he wants us to do, and then he will come through. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes Paul and the apostles, they ended up in prison. I mean, it wasn't like he always did it that way, right? He didn't always protect and just wing them right through. There's reasons for different things. Paul wouldn't have written almost the whole New Testament if he hadn't been in prison, if he'd been out there speaking all the time. You know, if you are in a bed somewhere and you can't get up and go, it's because God has something for you to do in bed. And I think we just have to trust that it isn't failure from God's perspective.
No, in fact, that was the exact thought I had when I was laying in that bed in Israel, and I realized all I could do was whisper because my voice didn't work and I couldn't even hold a phone. And the first thought that came to my mind was Moses. The whole thing about that was, well, I can't speak, but my brother can speak, so let my brother speak. And I thought, you know what? Maybe this time that is the way it's going to play out. And
this is just the situation.
I said, I know that God has given me a story to tell, and yet now he's taken my voice. So maybe I'm supposed to whisper into somebody else's ear, and they're the voice, and that's okay because God is on the throne.
Right.
And we're not all supposed to be the one. He's the one.
Yes.
And he moves the parts.
Yeah. I had a situation where years ago I kept losing my voice in the spring. Every year I would have laryngitis and it got longer and longer. The longest time it was almost 6 weeks. And by the end of that 6 weeks, I was thinking, I wonder if I will ever get to speak again. Yeah. And I love to sing. And years before that, I had written a song. But when my voice is gone, my spirit will sing on, for I live to sing your praise. And I wondered at that point, I thought, don't make this prophetic that I don't get to sing anymore, that I don't get to talk anymore. I want to talk. I want to sing. And God did give me my voice back. But what I realized during those weeks when I could not speak was that I could always pray. There was never a moment. I mean, obviously when you're sleeping or whatever, but I mean, as long as we have breath, we have the ability to praise the Lord and to ask for things that are needed and to be his vessel on earth, whether or not we have a voice. So when you guys are thinking about marketing for your speaking ministry or whatever, consider that all of it is in God's hands, every last thing. And whatever season you're in and whatever doors are or are not opening for you, God is in control. What do you encourage us to keep on doing? Just keep doing this.
Big number one is keep sharing at every opportunity. It doesn't always look like we think it's going to look, but it's still an opportunity. Like the pastor open mic for Lent. And the first time I shared a story about my daughter when God resuscitated my daughter. And it turns out that somebody in the congregation needed that message that day. I wasn't asked to speak at church. God nudged me to speak at church. Be sensitive to God going, now, get up now. It doesn't have to be our plan A. And then just this last Sunday, I was wrestling because I'm like, okay, I am not the speaker here. And this will be twice during Lent. So calm down, Linda. And I just felt God saying, no, 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 do. And I shared again about the brother Andrew, the prayer that God gave me. The sermon was about Jesus healing the blind man. And the point was, and it is the point of that story too, that God's miracles are for his glory. And it's humbling to be used to glorify God, that he uses us. And so keep doing that. Keep being open to that reality that we are here for the glory of God. And whatever you do, whether you eat or drink or go in and out, you know how that verse goes? Keep that in mind and keep doing that. And God will use us in ways that we didn't even see coming. But we wouldn't have those opportunities if we sat back and waited for plan A to work out.
One of my favorite prayers to pray for new speakers at womenspeakers.com, because as we're welcoming a new speaker, of course, the excitement is high and I want to go speak on new platforms. And of course, that's our goal too. Obviously, that's our ministry. So that's our goal too. But one of my favorite prayers to pray is that God would open doors of opportunity for her to speak, whether it is down the next grocery aisle or around the world. It doesn't matter as long as he's leading us, whoever. And I loved what you started with today. Just because you're not on a platform does not mean you cannot speak. You can speak.
Yep.
And, you know, there's that principle in the Bible. When you are faithful with the little things, he will give you bigger things. He will trust you with bigger things. When you are not faithful to say the word he's putting in your heart to the person across you on the bus, he will not put you on a platform, because how can he trust you to say what he wants you to say? That's right. And I just love that. So keep watching for every opportunity to open your mouth for Jesus Christ, and not the opportunities that you create, the opportunities that he creates.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that so much. And one of the things you want us to avoid something as well.
Absolutely. Avoid naysayers. And sometimes the verse that comes out to me here, and it's probably not what you expected me to say, Jesus said, a prophet is not without honor, except, and do you remember what the except list is?
Hometown.
Town, with his relatives, with his family. So it's really important to share your vision with people who share your vision.
Yeah.
If you share your vision with your family and get all discouraged because they don't back me up, Jesus didn't get backed up by his family, so don't take it so personally.
Right.
We're promised. We are not without honor. And I know maybe prophets of broad, I'm using it in a broad sense. We are speakers who share the message of God. That loosely qualifies.
Yeah.
But we are not without honor. So that honor comes from God. And so avoid just sharing with people that you think should be on your side when we've been kind of warned not to expect that. And don't take that personally. God is the one that's called you. God is the one that has equipped you. And God is the one who will open the doors. So don't worry about the people that go, I don't think you'd be a good speaker. God says, no, I'm giving you.
Right. And all we have to do is look at some of the people who God has made into big speakers in the Christian world, as well as in the secular world. I mean, some of the voices, it's like, wow, it's such a grating voice. You can just hardly imagine that this person is famous and on the radio every day, you know, but yet it is that grating voice combined with their personality that has actually been used to reach millions. It's not about what we think. And I love the naysayer warning there, because I even think as a speaker, and I know when at first I was speaking, man, I'd get those evaluations, and the ones that had a few words of criticism in them, oh man, I'd just be devastated. You know, there could be a whole pile of great ones, but the two in there that had something that I did wrong or whatever that they didn't like, those would be the ones that had me just crying. And I actually took to, when I had to do this for several years, when I would get my reviews or evaluations, I would actually kneel down in front of the bed and I would put them on the bed like Hezekiah did with that letter. And I would just say, okay, you tell me the truth, because it's really just as dangerous to listen to the good ones as
Yes.
to only listen to the bad ones. I mean, it's like it's kind of, you can get real prideful or you can get real discouraged. And the
Yes.
thing is, we're just supposed to be listening to Jesus. And a lot of times Jesus speaks through people. So
Yes.
what here am I supposed to be paying attention to? What here am I supposed to be really feeling like the conviction of God? Like, that was wrong for you to use her example without her permission. Okay, I need to learn that. I need to accept that. But it is true that there is a warning for us that we should not expect the people who are closest to us and know us best to see what God sees. Um, we took a tour through an amethyst mine years ago, and we went down. It was I love amethyst. It's that purple gem, and it comes encrusted all around with just ugly stone. And so we got down to the bottom of this truck, and across there's a huge wall of rock in front of us. And the amethyst miner, he says, this wall of rock is full of amethyst. And I'm squinting and I'm seeing nothing purple, not one little bit. But all he knew as the amethyst miner was it was full of amethyst.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a difference. People who are so close to us, they kind of see the wall. They see the rock. They see what isn't so glorious, what isn't so wonderful, what isn't so Jesus. They just see a lot of humanity right in front of them. But the fact is that we're not speaking to people. We're speaking to its audience of one. And then those are listening in. That's how I see it. I speak to an audience of one. I speak for an audience of one. And as long as we've got that right, then we can avoid the disheartening, even the results of your marketing, you guys. I mean, we're talking about marketing today. Maybe you have really been faithful to do what God put in your heart to do, but you're not seeing the results you wanted. Don't worry. If you're doing what God calls you to do, you're getting the results he wants you to get. And we talked about this earlier, not necessarily the results you were hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of marketing in this world is about integrity. It's about building integrity. And so, for example, for me, I've also become involved in our coffee ministry at church because it's a way to connect with other people. It's a way to have those small conversations. It's a way to tell people what you do. A big thing is tell people what you do. If people don't know what you do, they won't think that you might be good for this event they've got coming up. Talk about it. And that's where Toastmasters is helpful. It helps you hone that 5 minutes of talking about what you do. It's so important.
Yeah. I like to remind you guys too, whenever there's a couple points where you need to be sharing with your followers what's going on in your speaking life. And you can't do it all day, every day, or they wear out on that. That's just not necessary. But some points where you want to do it is, first of all, when you get an invitation to speak, share that publicly. I'm so excited that I've been booked to speak here on this day. Now, you've got planners probably in your audience who've been hoping to hear you speak sometime. Now you've given them a heads up, you'll be here on this date. Another thing is those who are praying for you can start praying for you as you start preparing for that. And those who just love you and are excited that you came to speak for their group or that they've gotten to hear you speak, they'll be happy to see that. Another time you can share about your speaking is when you're working on a presentation. I've been working all morning on my talk about blank for blank group on blank date. And one of the things that's really sticking out to me is, and then have a picture of a quote that it's like a quote that you've created, like something, a phrase that God's given you to share during this presentation. Share it publicly. Don't just keep it until that day. Start sharing it out there. And that can become part of your set of things that you share, is that quote going forward. And after the event, you won't necessarily have to point back to the event. You'll just still have the quote on the image to share. And then again, when you're getting ready to leave for the event, put it out there. I'm going to go speak here. Hope to see you there. Otherwise, pray for us. It's going to be a fun time. After the event, give a little recap and a thank you. So I feel like sometimes just what you said, if you don't tell people what you're doing, if you don't tell people One of the reasons God has put you on planet Earth, if you don't share it, they won't know. They can't just read your mind. They don't see your schedule. And so it's so important to be brave and to step out.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
That's another mistake we make, is that, well, they should know. No, they shouldn't.
They don't know. How could
No,
they know?
share it with joy,
Right.
share it with gratitude, share it with love, but share.
Yes. But share. Well, share it with the excitement that you feel, because honestly, if you're called to be a speaker, when you get a booking, you're excited. When you're preparing the talk, you're excited. When you're getting ready to go, you're excited. When you're coming back, you're excited. So all of those things are just honestly what people are looking for on social media. They are actually looking for something that would interest or excite them. That's what they're looking for on social media. They aren't looking for you to sell them something or to pressure them into doing something, but they are looking to share your life with you. And that's what we're talking about here. Linda, this has been so great. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for your life of faithfulness to God, too.
I'm only here because of that.
That's right. You're a miracle, walking miracle. Love that. And thanks you guys for joining us too. I want to encourage you to check out Linda's stuff. Her website has a great name, thesecretlifeofwonderwoman.com. Hey, before we go much farther, how did you decide to name it that?
When I
I love
came
it.
back to Gaza after having been so close to death, and I had to work very hard to build a rehabilitation program because there was no hope for my recovery, my kids said, "Mom, you're like Wonder Woman." And they bought me these Wonder Woman sneakers.
Fun.
And that's how it came about.
I love that. I love that. You know, and there's a verse in the New Testament that talks about that we work with the superhuman energy of God, you know, and I love that. It's kind of like being Wonder Woman when you're working with God, even though obviously we are just humans, and we serve a huge God. So love that. The Secret Life of WonderWoman.com. Also, she's available to speak for you at womenspeakers.com. Check out her profile there. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See you next time. Bye-bye.